Everyone, and welcome to our 89th episode of BrewTalk with Mr.Beer, first episode of 2021. My name is Robert Lewis. I will be your host for today's show. We appreciate you guys taking the time to tune in and watch us today. If you want to reference the notes for this video or any of our past 88 videos, you can find those on our blog page, mrbeer.com/blog. We have all the written notes on there, as well as some awesome blog posts that we write. It's a good place to get great information from throughout the years and some interesting ideas and recipes and just some fun stuff we got going on. I think we just released one about brewing with Beano in your beer, so a good healthy way to brew for the new year. Hopefully we got a ton of new brewers brewing up their first batch throughout this time of year, which is pretty awesome and exciting. So with that, kind of leads me into my topic today. When you're first brewing your first batch of beer, you get a ton of questions, so I just thought it would be good to go over some new brewer FAQs that you might have to kind of help alleviate some of the pain points, questions, or concerns that you may have about the brewing process. So let's just dive right into them. The first question is, it's something we actually get quite often: how do I open my Mr.Beer can? When you open your can of HME, hop malt extract, you will open it from the bottom. As you can see, cans have a lid here, the yeast sits underneath here, so you want to open it from the bottom, from the side that looks just like a can. So make sure that you are doing that, or else it will be very hard to open from the other end. So always make sure your label's upside down and you're not opening it from where the yeast packet is. Question number 2 is, how important is sanitization? So sanitizing is extremely important. I think it's probably, if not the most, the second most important part of the brewing. I'm gonna say it's the most important part of the brewing process. If this process gets messed up or you fail to do a certain step, it can lead to bad beer, which leads to a bad home brewing experience, which leads to you not wanting to brew beer again. So, sanitizing is a critical part of the brewing process. Don't overlook it. We always say it's better to over sanitize than under sanitize. So make sure that anything that you think might come in contact with anything you're using for brewing, just sanitize it. It doesn't hurt to sanitize everything. It makes it safe, makes it better to brew with, and prevents you from getting off flavors or an infected batch of beer, which is just not good at all. How do you clean your fermenter after you bottle? So you always want to make sure that you're cleaning your fermenter after you bottle your beer. If you don't, you get bacteria can build up in there, which can lead to infections in your beer, which will not be good. I think one of the easiest and best ways is to use unscented dish soap and a nice soft cloth, and just fill it with warm water, rinse it out, wipe it down really well. Make sure you're taking apart your spigot and cleaning that out really well as well. I think that's something that a lot of people overlook when they clean their fermenters. They don't take their spigots apart, so you can take it off your fermenter, make sure everything's out of there, make sure you run some water through there and some cleaning liquid, if you got whatever your soapy water is or whatever. If you don't want to use unscented soap, I know a lot of people use OxyClean Free and Clear, which works really well, or we sell a brewery wash on the website, Craftmiser Oxygen Brewery Wash. That works super well. That's what we use here in our brew room. Just make sure that when you're cleaning your fermenter and wiping it down on the inside, you're not using anything that's abrasive. You don't want to scratch that fermenter. If you scratch the inside of that, it can create little nicks that harbor bacteria, which can infect your beer. It seems like everything leads back to infecting your beer, which is not fun. But yeah, always make sure that when you're done brewing and bottling and cleaning your fermenter, and do the same thing for your bottles. It's just good practice to have. It helps everything last a lot longer, and make sure you're gonna have always good tasting beer. Question number 4. How can I tell if my beer is fermenting? So during the first 22 or 24 hours, you might not see much action going on in your fermenter, and that's totally fine. It can take 48 to 72 hours for the primary fermentation to kind of kick off and do its thing, and that's going to be the most active part of the fermentation stage. So what you'll see bubbles kind of building up and some white stuff on top of your batch of beer in your fermenter. However, you may miss this part. It could brew really fast. You could be at work for 8 hours and come home and go to sleep and not check your LBK for 48 hours, and you missed it, and you look at it, it looks like nothing's going on. But rest assured, even though the last part of the fermentation process isn't as active, it's still going on. I think a good way to tell is if you see sediment building up on the bottom of your fermenter, then you know that your beer is fermenting and it's good to go. We did a whole video on, I think, this a couple months ago for you to check out. Now this leads me into my next question is, what is that sediment at the bottom of the fermenter? So that's what's called trub. It's a byproduct of the fermentation process. And it's always a good thing. You always want to see that happening, because that means that your yeast is fermenting all those sugars in your beer, which is creating alcohol, which is just making delicious, amazing beer. You will see it in your fermenter as well as in your bottles, since we do naturally carbonated bottles. So you're adding, when you go to bottle your beer, you're going to either add carbonation drops or sugar, depending on what you have or what you feel like using, and the yeast is going to eat up that little bit of sugar, and that's what's going to create the CO2 in your beer. And that leaves a little layer of sediment at the bottom of your bottle. So when you put your beer in the fridge for 48 hours to chill, that sediment's going to drop to the bottom. It's going to clear and solidify down there a little bit. Some people choose not to drink that last little bit. They pour their beer into a glass, all that tiny little bit. Some people drink it. Can give you a little bit of gas, but to whoever wants to do that, to each their own. I usually don't drink it, but it doesn't hurt you though, and it's supposed to have very good benefits for you, but I just can't do that one. And the last question is, how important is fermentation temperature? Extremely important. When I was debating earlier between if sanitizing was the most important step, is between sanitizing and temperature. I would say, I guess sanitizing is more important, because just without clean things, no matter what your temperature is going to be bad beer. But then if you have bad temperature or whatever, you can go back and forth all day long, the chicken or the egg. So fermentation temp is very important. Too warm, you can get off flavors in your beer. Too cold, your yeast will not ferment all the way. Your yeast can work in a wide range of temperatures. So that's why you follow your instructions. We have a decent range on there, about 10 degrees. We have found the best results in fermenting in our brew room using any type of yeast except for lager yeast, obviously, is we keep it at 70 to 72 degrees. That's where things seem to ferment the quickest. They ferment the best. They produce the least amount of off flavors from the yeast, and the yeast does a good job of eating it up. Especially if you're brewing just like our standard refill, so you're brewing using the yeast underneath the lid of your refill. You want those to be in that 70-72 range. That's a proprietary strain of yeast from Cooper's Brewery, and that ferments very well warm than it does cold. So when it gets cold, it can ferment slower and even create some of those kind of cidery flavors you get in your beer. So really, when you're using just the standard yeast in your refill, you want it to be warm. So that's going to wrap up for the basic 5 questions. This was, like I said, our 89th video, so we have 88 videos of a bunch of other questions. I think the best way to find our videos is to check us out on YouTube. You can just follow us at Mr.Beer on YouTube. All of our videos on there. We've done some brewing videos, not so much as of late, just due to the situations going on, but it's a great place to reference through all of our old videos, see all of our stuff. We answer a lot of FAQs, got a lot of great advice and tips and stuff like that in there. So make sure you check us out on there. Make sure you're following us on all social media platforms. We're just at Mr.Beer on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, like I said, which is where we're most active on those 3 places. Also, if you want to kind of learn more about Mr. Beer, you got to check out our Facebook group, Mr. Beer's Brewing Society. You can just search that on Facebook, Mr. Beer's Brewing Society. We ask that you answer 3 questions, and we will let you in. If you don't answer the 3, we won't let you in, so please make sure you answer them. We usually let people in batches, so we won't let you in right away. It's usually like once a week. Let a bunch of new members just to give everyone a nice big Mr. Beer welcome, and they can get all their questions answered. And it's a cool place to share recipes, ideas, and brewing equipment and knowledge and all kinds of stuff. I think we had like over 100 members the other day, so it's definitely growing. I think we're pushing 2,000 members in there, which is pretty awesome. So that's going to wrap it up for this week. I'll be back again next week with another video. Hopefully you guys are brewing your 50th batch, whether your first batch. Hope you're enjoying it. Got any questions? Give our customer service team a call. Zach and Ashley are always here to help. We got phone call Monday through Friday, tickets, live chat, all that fun stuff. And I hope you guys have a great week. I'll talk to you next week. Cheers.